We at RunDNA want to be the group that is educating providers on how to help those people there and developing tools and technology and resources so that everyone can really benefit from this movement-based approach. Well, you do want to improve your running form. Great. We can personalize it and say, this is what you need to do. But ours is a personalized approach to making movement better, as opposed to just saying there's one size fits all.
Doug Adams from RunDNA, welcome to your podcast. You're a guest on your own podcast. It's got to feel that's a little weird.
Yeah, it's a little weird, but it's fun. I mean, when I get to be interviewed by you, it's a huge honor. So I appreciate it.
All right. So RunDNA listeners, I'm Jimmy McKay. I get to work in the background of the RunDNA podcast. I am also a physical therapist. And today I thought it would be better for me to switch places with you because you've got sort of this concept, this idea called 100 Happy Healthy. And instead of you having to explain it by yourself, I get to sort of come in and prompt you because I love the idea. You get really passionate when you start talking about it. And I was like, if you want people to understand it and feel that passion, let's talk about it. So big, hard-hitting question first. They've got to know, what is 100 Happy Healthy? How do you describe that to people?
Yeah, 100 Happy Healthy is the mission of RunDNA. And what that is our approach to healthy lifestyles. So we feel that it would be great if people could live to be 100 years old and happy and healthy when they get there.
Right.
We take a movement-based approach to this. So the way that we do this at RunDNA is we say that movement is essential for healthy lifestyles. So we provide education and technology that is going to really help promote healthy lifestyles through utilization of whatever movement you love. It doesn't have to be just running. It could be lots of different things. But if you love to move, whatever that is, use that and get the most benefit out of it so that you're going to have a long life full of health and happiness.
All right. So RunDNA, the word run is in there, but you sort of alluded to it a little bit. It's not just about running. Walking could also come in because walking is movement.
Yes. Yeah, and lots of other movements too. Running was a natural start for us. And the reason that is when I first came up with this 100 Happy Healthy plan over 10 years ago now, I started to think about, okay, what do we need to do? Like, how do we get there? Right? Because that's a pretty lofty, big goal. It's like, I want to help people live to be 100 years old, happy and healthy when they get there.
Right.
That's pretty big and it's pretty vague when you actually think about it, like, because there's lots of different things that go into longevity and health. So we kind of pared it down and say, let's focus on movement. I'm a physical therapist. Movement is essential to what we do. Let's go here. Okay, what movements help most with longevity? What's going to help people to live to be longer and healthy? So we started thinking about it. In my own personal experience, I was a triathlete, started off as a swimmer, moved into triathlons, had kids, and triathlons wasn't always as easy anymore. So now I've started to do running. And running has this great health benefit, but at the same time, it has a huge risk because a high percentage of the people that run have musculoskeletal injuries. I thought that would make running the perfect sport to start with, the perfect movement to focus on, because we could take a very proactive approach to it and show that people can get a lot out of running without having to feel like, is the juice worth the squeeze?
This was born out of a situation where you were looking on how to make a bigger impact, right? You were sort of looking around our profession of physical therapy and saying, how could I do this? And you can make an impact in a lot of ways, but I like origin stories because it comes with a real mission. It comes with a real passion.
Yeah, I was very fortunate in my career to just have great mentorship and just learn from some of the best in the field. So I had Lynn Steiner-Mackler, Irene Davis, Rich Willey, like all these people were just at University of Delaware while I was getting my PT school degree. And I knew going into it that I was really into endurance sports and I liked triathlons. And that was very near and dear to me and something I researched in my own time and had passion for. But then I learned from them and I started seeing this, and I was in an academic setting and so fortunate to be able to just see these types of patients and clients. And we had people coming in for gait analysis, and it's like, oh, this is great. Like, great job. Exactly what I want to do in my profession. Then fast forward, I leave academia, I go into outpatient sports and ortho PT, and all of a sudden, where'd all my runners go?
Yeah.
Where are they here? And I started seeing that, in the middle of the day, the runners were at work or school, and I had total knee patients, and I had back pain, and different populations that I wasn't as passionate about seeing, although still enjoyed the company and working with them and applying my skills. But I got frustrated pretty quick and wanted to do more with that. And then, so I figured I would start really getting myself out there in the running community. And I would get out there, but they were a little skeptical and said, "Well, what makes you so great? Why do you want to do this?" And so for me, I went inward and say, "How do I make myself really skilled at working with runners? How do I just learn everything about it?" Because it was complex. I had the fortune of understanding some of the research because I worked with some of the researchers and saw what 3D motion analysis was and got to participate in that. And I had that background, but there's so much to learn. I mean, I still learn something new about running every day, and that's why I love it. But as I started being very involved in learning how to treat runners well, I started to see that there were some patterns. And I started to see actually that a lot of what I was doing with runners transferred over to my other patients too, my non-runners, and really said, okay, I think some of the first thing that we need to do is really elevate the way that we approach movement and how we look at how movement can be utilized for benefit and health and where movement goes wrong. And that's why we started really with education. Education was the first thing that we did. We did some of these things that were just phenomenal courses that we were actually able to show people were making improved clinical outcomes, and really utilizing some of that, which was great. And then started during those courses going off on these long tangents, 3 to 4 hours long, about running, and then the running course was born out of those. And that was kind of the start of looking at how movement is. And then the technology came after that to say, well, how do we make these
How do we solve
concepts,
this?
yeah, how do we solve this? Like, how do we make this approachable? Because not everyone, and I was in the same situation. I didn't have $500,000 to buy a fancy gait lab so
Right.
that I could get the info that I needed. So we just built it to make it so that clinics could utilize it as well.
So how does someone follow who's listening right now? How does someone follow Run DNA's lead to 100 Happy Healthy? You've got a little bit of a wide audience, right? You've got
Yeah.
people who are physical therapists, people who work with runners, people who are runners. How do they follow the lead?
Yeah. So if 100 Happy Healthy resonates with you, if it's something that you're really like, that would be great, and you are a runner, or you want to get into running, or you're a walker, because now we're bringing on a walking algorithm. We're doing those things. So I think the education is a great place to start for both. If you're a runner, we have a free, or a physical therapist, or anybody in the medical profession or fitness profession. We have a free course, Essential Elements of Running. It talks a little bit about our approach, about how we look at the multifactorial nature of running injuries. And that's a great place to get started. And then there's certification level courses that gets involved. And if you're a runner, you can look up the people that have been certified to see who can help you really get a grip on some of your movements so that you can take the most out of it as well. And I think that find a provider list on rundna.com is a great way to get started with that. And you can either be on that list or find somebody on that list that can help you.
Yeah, I'd love a follow-up episode in a couple of years where we get to highlight some of the people who are getting closer and closer, or some of the people who've jumped on board and are 100.
Yeah,
Before we started talking, we mentioned that some experts have said that human longevity is expanding, and the first person who's going to live to be 150 has likely already been born. And what we know, what we can put in practice, is going to help make that possible. But I do like it's not just 100. You don't want to just get there. You want to be happy, you want to be healthy, and you want to enjoy that triple digit.
exactly. Yeah, that's the trick. And I movement is essential to that in my mind,
Sure.
because it's great. There's a lot of emphasis on it now, and there's some really great people that are leading the charge in longevity and fitness and health. And I think that it's great to see that, and hopefully people are latching in. But I think movement is probably core to almost every factor that goes into healthy aging. You think
Sure.
about sleep, right? Sleep is a huge factor of that. Well, if you're not moving enough during the day, if you're not expending your energy, if your circadian rhythms are off, it's all related to how you move, what you're doing. That's a essential part of it there. It'd be hard if you just sat on the couch all day, you're not going to live to be 100 years old, happy and healthy when you get there.
Correct. Yeah.
It's essential, and movement's both great that way, but it's also there's a great aspect of movement that also makes movement very challenging. And I think that that's a big reason why people should really care about this and seek guidance. Because one of the things we know about people that live for a very long time is they don't do it in isolation.
Sure.
There's not somebody sitting in an apartment doing it all by yourself. And I want people to know that you don't have to be going on this mission of 100 happy healthy alone. It's not just something that you're doing, it is something that you need guidance on, you need help on, you need somebody to show you the way and give you some feedback. I have the fortune to work with some of the greatest runners in the world, some of the fastest runners out there. And guess what? They all have coaches. Every single one. Every single top performer has a coach. And I think that we, as more recreational, not world caliber athletes, or just every day, maybe you're not even an athlete, you just want to be fit, you want to be healthy. We still need help. We still need guidance, and we need somebody to show us the way and give us feedback.
Yeah. That perspective, I
Yeah.
mean, same thing. I was a triathlete because I decided I like to be mediocre at 3 things in one day, and triathlon would allow me to do that. But when I really wanted to get serious, and by serious, I just wanted to improve, I knew I hit a plateau. I
Yeah.
hired a coach, and that coach was able to tell me things and see things. And it also, as you mentioned a second ago, it was better to do that with someone instead of
Yeah.
making this sort of journey or a race around, my year around a race alone. Having that individual who's focused on me, or that group setting, made things different, made it enjoyable.
It made it much more fun. And,
Yeah.
with movement, we have this great capability to modify our movement. So if you're standing up and you need to walk from point A to point B and you have heel pain, you're going to figure a way to get to B, and you're going to be able to do that. And that's a huge survivor benefit of movement. The problem is that you don't always revert back to your normal mechanics once the pain is resolved.
Right.
And then that snowballs. And all of a sudden, you go from walking that way from point A to point B to walking that way all the time, not even realizing it, not even knowing that you're doing something that's going to contribute to knee pain or back pain or hip pain that has just slowly come on over time. I mean, Jimmy, you're a physical therapist as well. And how often do you get the question when you're doing an eval, like, what do you think caused this?
Yeah.
And, in my head, I'm like, well, it could be 100 different things. I mean,
Right.
you could just, maybe you have left hip pain because you always cross your left leg over your right leg when you sit down, or
Right.
maybe you stand on one side put more weight on one side than the other, and you've done that for the last 20 years. I don't really know, but I think a part of the 100 happy healthy approach is that we are really proactive with movement. It's not just a reactive thing. And that's something that we're really trying to strive for as well. And that's a big reason that we've gone into the walking side as well. And on the running side, when we first introduced running gait analysis at this high level 3D, a lot of people thought, okay, I'll use this when I'm injured. Or if I'm really trying to get a big time goal, I want to run it was like sub 4 minute milers want to do this because they were looking for every little thing that can help them with performance.
Sure.
Now that we've been doing that for the past 8 years of doing 3D, what's really nice has been it's people that are coming in, it's the first time that they've run, and they want to get a gait analysis. They want to start off doing things well. And the people that started coming in for injuries, now they come in once a quarter just to check up and see how their form looks. Because
Yeah.
they've realized that they'll change how they move just naturally with aging. An injury happens, they travel, something changes, and they need to be looking at their movement on a consistent basis. So
Yeah.
the hope is,
It's that
yeah,
extra set of eyes.
it is. And it's the hope is that people are going to be proactive with their movement. They're going to say, I'm going to go in for my annual physical and get a walking gait analysis every year. And if there's a big leap from one year to the next, and maybe I'm not even feeling pain, I'm going to get ahead of that.
Sure.
And that might help somebody not get a knee replacement or push the knee replacement back an extra 10 or 15 years. Because if we're going to start living to be 150 years old, if you get a knee replacement at 50, how many times can you get that thing done?
Sure.
You can't go and get 4 knee replacements throughout your life. That's just not going to be possible. So we have to really take a proactive approach to movement, which I guess is another layer of the 100 Happy Healthy. Is it's not a reactive approach, it's a
Right.
proactive approach that you have
So
to get ahead of.
in terms of proactive approach, I'm guessing Run DNA, you're going to start to create things, resources, guides like you've done already. You said Run DNA started with education. I'm
Yeah.
guessing if the goal is 100 happy, healthy, that is something that's going to be a part of the equation.
Exactly. Yeah, just understanding. I think a big part of movement analysis is education. So we're looking at a lot of this, and when we do a 3D analysis for somebody, a lot of it that we have algorithms. So the algorithm can tell you what the number one thing to focus on is. That's a big part of it for the clinician side. For the runner side of it, seeing what they look like, seeing how they're moving and trying to understand how that could relate to current injuries, past injuries, future injuries. That's a big part of it because we're able to give them the knowledge to understand how they can change and adapt their movement so that they can avoid some of those things. And that's tough because it's how do you prove that you avoided
Right.
knee pain in somebody
Right.
there? But the nice thing about the way that we do this is, and this was a central approach when we started teaching education, when we first started the 100 Happy Healthy plan, our education courses were all about test retest. So what we do is we say, we're going to look at something, we're going to do something for that and see if it changes the way you move. And we're only focusing on top priorities. Because if you start thinking about it, and this is something throughout the years that we've had to adjust ourselves, is when you first start thinking about a longevity plan, just think about in your own heads now, if you're listening, what do you think would be everything that you need to do to live to be 100 years old? And people are going to start thinking about how to eat, how to sleep. They need to lift weights. They need to do cardio. They need to control their cholesterol. They need to have social interactions. They need to see a therapist for mental health. You start thinking about all these things, and it gets overwhelming. And people don't want to start because they don't know which is going to make the most benefit. So
Right.
when we did the education courses, we said we have to focus on the biggest priority at that moment. So we just did test retest, where, for example, somebody's having pain going up and down the stairs. Great. Where's the pain? Right at the knee. We test it, we see where it is. Then we hypothesize what's causing it. And we say, oh, yeah, you've got some soft tissue tension in the quadriceps and a strength deficit. So we're going to do a little hands on for that and see if that can reduce the pain. Great. They do the steps again and went from a 5 out of 10 to a 3 out of 10 pain. We say, great. Okay. That's helpful. And now we're going to do the strength on top of that too. And we're going to say, this is what we're going to do. And we give you 2 things to focus on of how to treat that. And when we do that, that makes a big difference there of how they're actually able to change their movement and enjoy that.
All right. So, what else do you want to cover with this? I feel like people understand sort of the why, and the what. What's next?
What's next is really getting people to adopt this 100 Happy Healthy approach, to seeing that it's not anything that is extremely difficult to do. Because I think people think that it's out of reach, and 100 Happy Healthy isn't hard. One of my favorite authors, James Clear, his book Atomic Habits,
Yeah.
talks about the approach to this. And I really appreciate the way that he looks at it. He says the way to think about this is, all right, how are you going to make decisions about somebody that lives to be 100 years old and happy and healthy when you get there? So if you think about that, if I'm going to be 100 years old and happy and healthy when I get there, is what I'm doing today contributing to that? And what would that person do? And what would a healthy 100-year-old do that really makes a big difference with it?
Right.
And I think that's really helpful because in my own personal experience, I had an injury this past summer. I had a partial tear of my patellar tendon, and that sidetracked me from running, the sport that I love to do. And that was hard for me mentally. But I thought about it and I said, well, my goal is to go for a run on my 100th birthday. If I run through this and if I don't rehab this, is running for the next 3 or 4 weeks instead of taking off really going to help me get to be taking a run on my 100th birthday? And the answer is no. And that makes it much more easy to accept
Right.
because I think that people can get their head around, all right, I need to take a proactive approach to movement. I need to be focusing on flexibility and I need to be focusing on strength and I need to focus on the way that we move. I don't think anybody's going to argue against that.
Right.
There's not going to be really any ground to stand on against that. But how do you make that approachable?
Right.
How do you make that easy? And I think we've covered the main point of it is get help and don't be afraid to ask somebody. And that's why we started with education and then we built the technology to make it easier for people. But then the next step is also embracing it yourself and saying, this is approachable. I can do this. And if I just take the small bite approach to it and say, yeah, it's not a big deal. And if I miss once, not a big deal either. You don't want to miss twice on being healthy. But if you go out and you have fun and you eat a big meal out, it's no problem. Just don't do it every day in a row and figure out how to be modified with it. It's not as hard as people think. And I think that's a really important message too, that you can be healthy because if you've watched shows like or read books like Blue Zone or things like that about, I mean, there's people in there that drink alcohol. They're a little overweight. They don't run. They don't do those things, but they get a lot of the other things right. And you don't have to do everything. You have to focus on what's your biggest priority that you're most likely to do. And you need somebody else to help you figure that out. You don't have to do it alone.
Understand what those things are, right? Eat better, sleep more, drink more water, and move more is very great advice. It's general though.
Yeah.
I need you to, in the words of James Clear, I need you to break it down to digestible bits that I can achieve every single day. And then when I've done those small things, those simple things over time, they will add up.
Yeah. And that's what I would love to see. I love for the people listening to this. What's your approach? I think we can all learn from each other because I think there's community around this. So comment, share, talk about this. Start making this a topic of conversation, that it's good to make healthy decisions and be willing to share what's your secret. Because anytime I meet somebody that's over like 85 years old, one of my first questions, I was like, all right, what's the secret? How do you get there? What's your key to longevity?
Yep.
And a lot of it's not, I don't think I've gotten the same answer twice.
Right. And it's also typically not revolutionary. It's not something crazy that maybe it's not out of reach, as you mentioned before. It's not something that someone couldn't put into their life and reasonably adopt.
Yeah. So I think this is something we have to talk about more. I think it's something we have to think about more. I think it's something that we need to come together more. And we at Run DNA want to be the group that is educating providers on how to help those people there and developing tools and technology and resources so that everyone can really benefit from this movement-based approach, because we've done the work, we've done the analysis and understanding, well, you do want to improve your running form. Great. We can personalize it and say, this is what you need to do. But ours is a personalized approach to making movement better, as opposed to just saying there's one size fits all.
Right. Yeah. Well, you've already sort of showed your cards. You said on your 100th birthday, you want to go for a run. I think I'd like to know what people listening or watching this would want to do on their 100th birthday. And it's not that it's not that crazy to think that you can decide now. In fact, I think if you want to be doing something on your 100th birthday, you should be deciding now, and then work backwards. What is going to put me in the best position possible to do that, to do it well, to be happy while I'm doing it on top of it.
Yeah, that's exactly, when my own personal training, I said, great. I decided to train for a mile, and I said, I'm turning 40 in less than 2 weeks here. And I need to focus on strength. I know that I'm losing muscle mass. I know that I'm doing these things. And if I'm going to run at 100, I'm going to focus on strength, and I'm going to do these things. And it makes it much easier to see the right path. And then that's motivating itself too. And start backwards, think big, start backwards, break it down. And it's not that hard, but if you do it for a long time, it's just like saving money. You save money for a long time, and all of a sudden you got a big bank account sitting there, but you don't have to save a lot. You just have to be consistent with it.
Well said. Doug, appreciate you coming on your podcast to talk about 100 Happy Healthy.
Thanks, Jimmy, for having me on my podcast. Always a pleasure to be here.
Like what you hear? Leave a review of the show wherever you listen, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. RunDNA helps runners and running specialists through education and technology to identify each runner's unique injury profile to avoid setbacks and maximize results. The RunDNA podcast is produced by Ace Running LLC. The RunDNA podcast is intended for educational purposes only. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can occur. Always seek the guidance of qualified medical professionals before making healthcare decisions. Find us online at rundna.com.